This is Doug DeMuro, and today we're going to talk through my favorite cars that are not sold in the United States. I'm constantly being asked by people, if you could import any car that isn't sold in the States, what would you get? And it's an interesting thought exercise, so I've decided to answer it. These are my favorites that we don't get here.
Before we get started, are you ready for your next cool car? Sell your enthusiast car on Cars and Bids. Trading in your car to dealers means you aren't getting market value for your car, leaving you with less cash for your next fun car. Just look at our recent sales of these cool cars compared to current trade-in value. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is the trade-in offer, and this is the Cars and Bids result. Get started now on carsandbids.com. Sell on Cars and Bids and join the best community to sell your enthusiast car.
Okay, so my favorite new cars, brand new models that are not sold in the United States, though I wish they were. And this is in alphabetical order. I'm not ranking it, so it's purely alphabetical, but all 7 of these cars I think are really cool, and I do wish we had all 7 of these cars here in the States. Okay, so we begin with a very, very obvious one that's really been making the rounds in Europe. Very sad we don't get this car in the States, and that would be the newest revived version of the Alpine A110. And if you don't know what this is, it is it's sort of a modern take on a very famous old historical sports car. The old school A110 was made throughout the 60s and 70s. And this new one was a revived version, came out back in 17, and it's still being produced today, and it is a very, very, very cool car. Not only does it look cool, because it really does capture the essence of that old school car, but sort of in a modern way. It's like a retro design, but in the best way possible. They didn't just steal the old design, they kind of took it and modernized it. It looks very cool, and everybody agrees about that. But the other benefits are this car is also very light. It's a mid-engine sports car. It's also very lightweight, and from what I understand, it is very fun to drive. It uses a turbo 4-cylinder from Renault, and the base model is about 250 horsepower, but it goes up to about 300 horsepower in the top version. Unfortunately, it is a dual clutch automatic only. It is not offered with a manual, but one benefit is compared to something like the Alpha 4C, which is also sort of this, kind of one-off mid-engine type rare sports car, that had that difficult, dual clutch, dry, felt like a sequential manual transmission. It was kind of hard to operate. I'm told the Alpine's transmission is quick and instant, just like other dual clutches like Porsche PDK, etc. The other cool thing about it is it's lightweight and it's little. It's only 165 inches long, not a very big car, and it's only about 2,500 pounds. And so it's like a little lightweight, tossable mid-engine sports car, kind of reminiscent of something like the old school Toyota MR2. In today's world, if you have a mid-engine sports car, it is almost always going to be something very expensive, very powerful, which is kind of a shame because mid-engine design lends itself to a fun, tossable little car just as much as it lends itself to something like this that's kind of more, and that's a supercar. And a lot of those little mid-engine cars have gone away. The Boxster and the Cayman are some of kind of the only ones left. They're not exactly cheap themselves, and over the years they themselves have gotten larger. They're still very tossable, still very fun, but now they're off the market too. We're not sure if they're going to come back with electric or gas or how it's all going to work. And so this car provided a little bit of hope, and it was sad to me that it was never available here in the States. It's been sold in Europe and apparently in Asia and Australia for years now. And it's relatively popular. I was in London a few years ago and saw a bunch of them on the street. And I do wish that this was an opportunity for Americans. Something competes with kind of a Cayman and gives us sort of a different opportunity to get something a little bit quirkier, maybe a little bit lighter, more tossable, more fun, something a little bit absent from the US market. Okay, next one. Favorite new cars that are not sold in the US. This is a very, very obvious one if you follow my content at all. The new BMW M3 Touring. It is such a mistake that BMW does not sell the wagon version of the M3 here in the United States. And it is so sad because they do sell a wagon version of the M3 overseas. And it's interesting because BMW has never offered a wagon version of the M3 ever until the newest generation of the BMW M3. They finally decide to do it, and they decide not to bring it here. And I think this is a massive mistake because the Audi RS6 they don't even sell a sedan. They're only selling a wagon. The E63 Wagon now outsells the E63 sedan. BMW themselves finally brought the wagon version of its M5, the M5 Touring, to the United States after some kind of stops and starts doing M5 Touring models over the years. And wagons have really kind of they've taken off a little bit. Wagons and hatchbacks in the performance segment have taken off. At lower end, you have the Volkswagen Golf R and the Toyota GR Corolla and other cars that have been really, really popular as hatchbacks. And this market segment has kind of proven itself, and I find it to be so sad that BMW decides not to sell the M3 Touring here in the States. And based on the success of the RS6 and what I presume will be an RS4 Avant, RS5 Avant, however they want to position it, the RS6, the M5, I think BMW will eventually bring an M3 Touring to the US. But unfortunately, my guess is that when they finally get around to it, it's going to be plug-in hybrid and bigger and all this stuff. Whereas the current M3 Touring could in theory be offered with the manual transmission, just like the regular M3 sedan is offered with the manual transmission in the States. And that would be just an amazing combination of things as sort of like a swan song to kind of some of the things we hold dear for BMW, the straight six, the manual, etc. So really, really sad that car is not here. We do get the X3M. It is a great car. We do get the M5 Touring. Despite a lot of hate about its size, I think it is a great car, but no M3 Touring is a shame. And by the way, in the same vein, I feel similarly generally about the C63 AMG wagon, which has been offered overseas basically since the C AMG came out. The original C43 AMG back in 98, 99 was offered as a station wagon, and Mercedes has always offered wagon versions of the C-Class AMGs overseas. We've never gotten in the States. Now, the latest version of the C63 to me is not particularly desirable with the turbo 4-cylinder, and so I much more lament that we don't have the BMW. I'm not as sad that we don't have the Mercedes. But generally speaking, I have been sad in the past that Mercedes has not offered the C63 AMG wagons, especially that one that came out in 2008, which is such a cool car with the big 6.2 V8. I always thought it looked really nice, and it's such a shame we don't get those in the States. Okay, next one, cars I wish we got here in the US. Here's one that I not necessarily buy myself, but I really think we deserve to have this car in the US, and that would be the Ford Everest. If you don't know what this is, it is an SUV that is sold globally, basically everywhere globally, that is a body-on-frame SUV based on the Ford Ranger pickup truck. And for some reason, the Everest is not sold in the US, which I find a little bit curious because one of the most popular SUVs on the market is the Toyota 4Runner, which is a body-on-frame SUV based on the Toyota Tacoma, which is Toyota's midsize pickup truck. And it seems so obvious to me, if you're selling the truck anyway, the Ranger or the Tacoma, sell the SUV, which Toyota is like, of course, but Ford doesn't for some reason. And I cannot, for the life of me, understand why this car is not sold in the US. The 4Runner has proven there is a strong market for a body-on-frame midsize SUV based on the truck. And given that the truck is already here and has already been federalized and crash tested with the right engines that would probably be in the SUV, it doesn't make sense to me why they don't also just do the SUV. And it's especially sad because there's like a Raptor version of the Everest, or at least like off-roader ones. It looks really cool. Like, I think this would be a really strong local competitor to the 4Runner. Now, my presumption is that Ford says, well, hey, we have the Bronco, which is also a competitor to the 4Runner. The 4Runner, the roof doesn't remove and all that stuff. But when you really look at who's buying them, the Bronco, the 4Runner, and the Wrangler are all pretty similar. But nonetheless, like, it seems so obvious to me, well, why not also just give us an enclosed one with 4 regular doors for people who don't want removable doors and a removable roof and maybe the kind of the brawn of the Bronco? Why not just offer this? It's offered literally everywhere else, and it is so obviously a desirable vehicle in so many other markets and could have that effect here just based on the outright success of the 4Runner. Why don't you just do this? But for some reason they won't. I think they really want the Bronco to lead this market. And I think it's just a little bit of a shame. Not everybody is looking necessarily for a Bronco, but some people would like a vehicle like this. And I think a lot of the reason that people buy 4Runners in the first place is because they don't want the ride and driving experience of a Wrangler or of a Bronco, which is with all the removable stuff. It's louder. It's just not quite as good, as refined, as easy to use day to day. And so they get a 4Runner. And I think if Ford had a real hardcore 4Runner competitor like the Everest, they they would be able to kind of hold off some of those people. Okay, next up, cars that I really wish we got in the States. And this is one I really wish we got in the States. I would never personally buy it, but I really want to make a video with it. And that would be the Hyundai Staria. For those of you who have not heard, this is a minivan. And it's not the type of car I would normally be clamoring for to come to the United States, but it just looks so cool. It is just so ridiculous. This sloping front end with this kind of like light bar around the front. It looks like a van from the future. And I just think it is one of the coolest looking vans ever to exist. And I'm sure it's full of weirdnesses too. It's gotta be. It's Hyundai. They're doing all these modern, weird, quirky vehicles. I'm sure that creating a vehicle that looks this weird, there's probably some interior quirks. I do know that the seats all fold into a bed. You can use this to go camping, which is a pretty cool feature in itself. They offer it with all-wheel drive, which is also pretty cool. And they offer it with like a wide variety of like gas, hybrid, diesel powertrains. It's neat. Now, I'm not surprised they don't sell it in the States. In the US, vans, cargo vans that come into the United States are subject to this massive tariff called the chicken tax. And this has generally stopped automakers from selling vans in the United States unless they're built here. You can bring in a passenger van, but the simple truth is there's just not all that much interest in minivans anymore in the States. There are 4 minivans on the market today. One of them is offered by Kia, which is of course one of Hyundai's rivals. And it doesn't seem like it makes as much sense to like bring a vehicle like this to the States. And honestly, we're kind of seeing that with the Volkswagen ID Buzz, which, is supposed to be this like cool, quirky, awesome Volkswagen Halo car thing. And I think it is, but it's also just not selling all that well. The market doesn't seem to like vans. Even if they're really cool and quirky and weird, we just don't want vans. That one is really expensive, but I imagine the Staria wouldn't exactly be cheap. And I don't think that like a van can even if it's quirky and cool and interesting and fun, the fact that it's a van, I don't think is ever really going to win out with American consumers. So this is a cool car. I would love to review one. I think it is one of the most bizarre, interesting things, but unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen, and I certainly don't think it's going to come to the States, even as quirky and cool as it is. Okay, next one, cars that I wish were sold in the US, but are not. This is a little bit more of a complex one, the next entry on this list, and it is the Ram 700. You know about the Ram 1500, the Ram 2500, the Ram 3500. Well, in Latin America, maybe elsewhere in the world, but in Latin America, they sell a Ram 700, which is sort of like a baby pickup truck. And essentially it's based on a car. And also they sell it as the Fiat Strada. And it's essentially a truck based on a car. And in years past, I never would have cared that this existed. I never would have thought much about it. But I have to say, the arrival of the Ford Maverick has really gotten me thinking, car-based trucks are actually kind of cool. They're useful, they're practical, they're fuel efficient. For most people, they do all of the truck stuff that you might need. Like, I actually have kind of come around a little bit on car-based trucks. Now, this particular car-based truck, the Ram 700, is optimized for Latin American markets, which probably means it's smaller than a Maverick. It's the noise and harshness is probably more than a Maverick in order to kind of get it to fit in at an affordable price point for Latin and Central America. However, the concept of this vehicle is appealing to me. I'm not entirely sure that the existing current Ram 700 would be a big seller here, but I do think that it would be interesting if Ram had the idea to create a Maverick competitor with like the next Ram 700. When the next generation comes out, maybe time to think like, hey, could we offer a version of this car in the United States? Because there's clearly a market for it. Maverick has been a really hot seller. And honestly, I think Maverick is just cool. It's like a really good idea, like a city-friendly pickup truck. And it's something we haven't had here in the States in a long time, since like the kind of little trucks in the 80s and 90s. A lot of that stuff went away. Maverick has brought it back. The Maverick has proven it can be successful. And although I'm sure that the Ram 700, is primarily thought of as like a Mexico market thing, it's worth having a conversation on the next generation. Like, hey, should we at least deal the United States in? Should we allow them to think about it? Like, should we design this vehicle so it could be also sold in the US as a Maverick competitor? And I never would have said this about this Ram 700. They come up from Mexico. I'm here in San Diego. We see them on the road pretty often. I never would have said, yeah, bring this to the States, until I saw what the Maverick is and what it can do and how successful it can be. And now I'm thinking, Ram, you're in this space anyway. Like, maybe you should think about doing this and bringing it to the US. Okay, next up, cars that I wish we got in the States This one is the one that makes me the saddest of all of them, and that would be the Subaru Levorg, which is the worst named car in history, but it is a very cool car, specifically because it is essentially a wagon version of the Subaru Impreza, and specifically the Impreza WRX. So Subaru has not offered a WRX wagon or hatchback in the States for like 15 years. The 2011-12 STI WRX wagon hatch, that was the end. The original WRX was offered as a wagon. The original overseas WRX was offered as a wagon beginning in the early 90s, but in the States, they haven't done it in a long time. However, overseas, they do offer a wagon version, which is this Levorg. And the sad, annoying thing is that this car is offered with the WRX powertrain as a WRX wagon, basically, and we don't get it in the States. And it just makes me so disappointed that Subaru has kind of pared down its once great Impreza and WRX lineup that used to have the STI hatchback, the regular WRX. Now it's basically just the regular WRX sedan. All the wagons are gone, all the STIs are gone, but they still offer this thing globally. And actually, it's a pretty nice looking car. Despite its name, it looks pretty good. It is more practical than a regular WRX. And like I mentioned earlier, talking about the M3 Touring, you know, wagon performance wagons are like in right now. That's like the thing that people are looking for. And this would be such a cool performance wagon. And it just disappoints me so much. It's not like they don't even make the car. Like, they only give us the sedan. It's not like they don't offer a wagon. They do. They just don't bring it to the States, even though they could. And I personally am a huge fan of the new WRX. I know people think it's weird looking. I know people think, you know, the powertrain, all this stuff's gotten old. It's not as competitive as it once was. I find it drives fantastically. I love the engine. I love the steering. I think it is a really cool car. And I think offering more WRX is never a bad thing. And I just think it would be a lot of fun to own and have and drive a new WRX wagon. Just offering that in the States. Obviously, I would of course love an STI version as well, but they don't even do that overseas. But doing a WRX version would be so cool, and I'm just so sad they don't offer it, especially because they so easily could. It's not like I'm asking them to create something that doesn't exist. I'm just asking them to bring it here. And with that in mind, the final favorite car not sold in the United States, this one is no surprise, the Toyota GR Yaris. The GR Yaris, which is the high performance version of the Toyota Yaris, still in production globally and just one of the coolest cars I've ever driven. Turbo 3-cylinder in this car, makes up to 300 horsepower, and it is just so much fun to drive. And I have to say, I drove a GR Yaris. They sold it in Mexico. I had a Mexican guy came up and let me drive his GR Yaris for a video. Years ago, I did it. And it was, I just had the most fun driving that car. It was so tossable and so engaging and so enjoyable and so communicative and quick and easy and fast. And then Toyota announced they were bringing the GR Corolla here, and I'm pretty excited about that. Like, that's really cool. And I gotta say, I love the GR Corolla. I think it is great. It is not the GR Yaris. It is not as fast. It is not as tossable. It is not as eager and fun and peppy and cool. But most importantly, the thing that makes the GR Yaris so cool is it is a homologation car to go rally racing. And you know, the GR Corolla is also a fun, fast car, but like it's a consumer car, like every car. The GR Yaris isn't that. Like, it is a rally car first, and they only made the two-door body style just purely because they needed to homologate the rally car to abide by rallying rules. Like, other Yaris models were 4 doors overseas, and they were like, oh, we got to make a 2-door just to go rallying. And that story is so cool. And you pair that with the smaller size and the more tossability. It is just such a fun, such an engaging, such a cool car. And I love it. I love, love, love it. And I am just so sad that Toyota doesn't bring it here. You know, they can't. We don't get the Yaris anymore. There's no sense bringing it just for this mod. I get it all, but I would just love if Toyota brought the GR Yaris to the States. I think it would be such an exciting, amazing thing. As much as I love the Corolla, the Yaris is just that much cooler, just a little bit more exciting, just a little bit more fun, and I think the story is a little bit better. And I'm really sad that we're gonna have to wait until these things hit 25 years, which is in 20 years from now, in order to see GR Yarises in the States. But there you go. Those are my top cars. Again, I'm always getting asked, what are the cars? And fewer vehicles are not being sold in the States. More and more frequently, automakers are selling their whole product lines in the US. They've realized American consumers have money, they want performance, they want it all. And so it's not like back in the 90s when so many special cars were not sold here. But there are still a few, and those are the 7 that I think, that I wish were sold in the States.